Welcome to another edition of One More Light with me, Val Kleinhans, the podcast where we try and break the stigma and we keep the conversation regarding mental health going. And today we have an exciting guest. I'm so stoked for her, Jessica Da Silva. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and attachment coach. Jessica, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I am so excited because this topic, I think everybody can relate to
Mhm.
relationship struggles, creating strong relationships. You chose to study relationships specifically. So, why did you decide to make that your focus of study?
Yeah, because relationships has always been my biggest pain point. So,
Yeah.
yep, it has always been a struggle for me. And so I realized that, I didn't want to continue living this way because, I mean, as you know, when, your relationships, they seep into every aspect of your life.
Right.
So, if you are experiencing a lot of turmoil, a lot of pain, a lot of stress within your relationship, that's going to affect your work life. It's going to affect your dreams, your goals, your mental health, your physical health. And I noticed that and I was like, wait a second, why do I have to keep living this way? I don't have to keep living this way. So anyways, I went back to school, did a lot of training, started working with people in regards to marriage and family therapy, and just started healing in that whole process.
Cool. Why do you think relationships are some of the most complicated parts of our life?
I mean, because, well, if we're talking about attachment theory, right? Because
Right.
that's obviously what I focus on. We're wired for attachment. We're wired for relationships, so we can't get away with it. We can't escape it. It's just we're drawn to those bonds and those relationships and intimacy. And it's either we have healthy ways of experiencing love or we have insecure ways of experiencing love. So that's why this work is really, really important so that you can actually experience the type of relationship that you're actually desiring.
Yeah. Let's talk about the difference between the two. What does an unhealthy attachment style or relationship vibe look like? What does a healthy one look like?
Yeah. So according to attachment theory, right, there's four different types of attachment styles. You have the anxious attachment, the dismissive avoidant, fearful avoidant, and secure. So healthy relationship, quote unquote, would be more of that secure attachment where there's this underlying sense of trust, there's good communication, there's understanding, you understand each other's differences and needs, there's compromise, there's partnership, there's support. And then you have the insecure attachment. So we'll start with just a little breakdown, like the anxious attachment, right? They love, they want that connection, but they have a deep fear of abandonment, which causes a lot of their like need for excessive validation, reassurance, connectivity, communication, right? So that can drive someone wild.
Yeah.
And then you have the dismissive avoidant who also wants that connection, but they're scared of it. They're scared of relationships consuming them, taking away their independence, taking away their freedom. So they always keep people at a distance, don't get too close to me.
Mhm.
And then you have the fearful avoidance, which is the third insecure attachment style. And there's no order to this, but another name is disorganized, and they have both anxious and avoidant tendencies. So like part of them, I know that's the one
That
that
sounds like me already. She said anxious
yes,
and avoidant in one sentence. I was like,
for sure.
the girl is talking about me right now. Oh no.
It is, oh my God, like the conflicted state of mind, right? Where you're just kind of like bouncing off from avoidant to anxious, anxious to avoidant. There's no consistent way of really experiencing love. Yeah.
No, well, it's so funny because there are plenty of times when, especially depending on the environment that you're in, I'm like, do I want to get to know this person? Do I not want to get to know this person? I kind of do. I would like to be social, but then I get nervous when I'm in that social setting, and I'm like, what did I do to myself? And I'm like, it's this odd dichotomy of how do I decide what's right for me? Do I need to set any boundaries? Do I not need to set any boundaries? Safe here? Am I not safe here? Work so strange because I feel like there are some coworkers that genuinely care about who you are as a person. And then there are some that are like, how's your lunch? Good morning. And then, by the way, here's this paperwork. And it's entirely fake. So it's like, what do you do with that?
Oh my goodness gracious. That's what I'm saying. And you're so hyper attuned to that. You're so hyper aware. You can pick up on those incongruencies. With that, honestly, it's learning how to navigate the gray area.
Mm,
Learning how to navigate the gray area because we are very quick to, and this is speaking to all insecure attachment styles, we're very quick to put things in black and white,
yeah.
right? So that coworker that said something funny will be like, oh no, she's a bad person. I'm gonna put her here. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just it makes up, and we do that in order to protect ourselves because we're so fearful, right? So we're like, okay, this is I have to categorize people to make sense of people, and if I make sense of people, I'm protected, I'm good. But in
Mm,
that process, it's, you know, you're not giving yourself any opportunity for growth. You're not giving yourself any opportunity to just to know people, to really know yourself. So long story short, learn to be okay with the flaws of life and the flaws of humanity. Learn to be okay with that.
and just kind of
Yeah.
accept what is as it comes. Maybe this person is completely fake. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe they're not a genuine person. Maybe disingenuous is their middle name. But
Yeah.
you don't have to become buddy buddy with that person. Speaking more so about the workplace, because we all work with people that like sometimes we like them, sometimes we're like, not my cup of tea. We can pick and choose. There's no law that says you have to be best friends with your coworker.
No.
You just have to do what you can and get through it as best as you can.
100%. Yeah. Well, are you speaking of a recent, a personal
It's all
situation?
recent. It's all recent. I mean, honest to God, one of the reasons I started this podcast was because I went through outpatient therapy after a very, very serious bout of suicidal ideation. And the source of that came from working relationships and what was going on at work. And I couldn't, I had trouble. mm, I don't know what the word would be, but I had trouble rectifying those politics. I had trouble picking up on the like social cues that made it hard to work with certain people that just have those expectations of you. Like
Mm.
they didn't like if you were honest because you think that honesty is a form of respect. Well, not every office looks at it that way. You know what I mean? So it was
Yeah.
kind of, I was struggling with those social relationships and feeling like I didn't fit in because sometimes I thought it was regional. Like I came from Pittsburgh originally and I'm from an Italian American family. There's not a lot of secrets in our families. It's very much expression, demonstrative speaking. You can
Yeah.
say what you want within respect, but you're still allowed to share your feelings and your thoughts and your passions. Italians are passionate people. So when I come to somewhere like the Midwest, where it's a little bit more
Yeah.
reserved and a little bit more nicey nicey and passive aggressive, and let's not talk about the hard stuff, that took me, that completely screwed with my psyche. Because I'm like, how do I interact in this world with this culture that I'm not accustomed to whatsoever? And then it took therapy to teach me mindfulness, which said, hey, you can stop those thoughts for a moment and just treat those emotions like waves, and you
Yeah.
don't have to be so reactive to them right away. And then
Totally.
once you learn how to do that, you can decide how to proceed from there. Because I'm very reactive and spout my mouth off uh,
Same.
and expressive because it was safe to do so in the environment that I was in.
I see.
So now that I can't, in some aspects, I was like, okay,
Yep.
what do I do with this? But it's gotten better. Learning mindfulness was something that helped for sure because
Yeah,
it helped me to stop myself before saying or doing something that might not have been nice, or
for
uh,
sure.
I could have been more polite about saying certain things instead of just not putting them through a filter before they come out.
Yeah. And that gray space is mindfulness. It is because you're not reacting. You're just kind of observing
Right.
your environment. You're observing people without judgment,
Yeah.
right? Because when we get reactive, it's because we're trying to defend something. And that's the black
Yes.
and white. Like we're trying to defend something. So when you're just cruising through the gray, it's like, all right, I see you. That was weird. Okay, I see that. That was funky. You're just observing. You're not reacting.
Right. I call that Jane Goodall. I will
Yeah.
jangle it all. I will jangle all this whole jungle. I will look at everything and just stop and let it be what it is before reacting. That's something that I didn't do in the previous industry that I worked for because there were a lot of dynamics that almost didn't allow for it. And I think there
Mm,
was some cultural stuff going on, regional stuff going on too. But now I'm in an environment where you can speak your mind to a certain extent, but we still want you to put a positive spin on it.
right.
So now I'm kind of like, okay, this is better than where we were before, but I'm still having to work on how do I not affect this relationship by, setting a boundary, but doing it in a way where it can be received, for lack of
Mm,
better term, or how do I present this to that person in a way that maybe they can receive it better? And just
100%.
being conscientious of that because I wasn't so before. I learned a lot. Group therapy taught me a lot.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that was a lot at once. That was I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I was like, there's something there. She's got something to say right now.
It's been on the brain. I mean, I'm passionate about this because I don't want people to, feel like they're so alone whenever
Yeah.
they encounter situations where maybe they're not getting along with everybody or, maybe they are frustrated because their communication style doesn't match somebody else's or, I hope that this can inspire people to just, look at the relationship for what it is and then proceed from there. And
Yeah.
I know that you spent a lot of time with couples too. So I was curious to ask about this. We always have those thoughts, and those sayings that, oh, men never express their feelings,
Mm.
things like that. What do you do when you're working with a couple and that ends up being true? Like one of the partners just is not as communicative because I feel like the only way you can really foster a relationship is that verbal communication. Maybe
Mm.
I'm wrong. You tell me. Maybe
No, you're right.
it's true.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, for like the intimacy within a relationship, you need to be able to talk about emotions and how you're feeling. And often, I mean, this is really, it's learning the language of emotion. There's a lot of people, especially if you're more avoidant attached, right? Like, and usually that has been with men. And that varies within each culture, obviously. And that's not to say that all men are avoidant, not at all. It varies.
No. I've
Yeah.
seen grown men cry, but they won't do it unless they're in the right environment.
Uh-huh.
Or they won't do it unless they're in a setting that society says you can do this now, aka crying
Right.
over like
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. So in those, when I work with people that have a hard time expressing emotion, it's giving them a language, like a vocabulary to identify what they are experiencing. And I have like PDFs and stuff, like, and you can get those on Google too, like download different emotions. And so when they're feeling certain things throughout the day, having them kind of note in a journal, okay, today I was feeling angry. Okay, I was feeling angry, and writing down what happened, right? That made you feel angry. So, kind of taking note throughout the day, these different emotions that you're experiencing. And over time, you're like, okay, I'm familiar with these emotions now. I can express it, I can talk about it because I know what I'm experiencing. So, you're teaching them a new language.
yeah, it's different,
Yeah.
but I think that's why like the book that a lot of couples read, I get or I hear, well, I did anyway when I first got married was the five love languages.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. This is actually pretty insightful. Like this, even if somebody's not a talker, something like this can maybe walk you through like how to best communicate with your partner or how to show that partner love. If
Yeah.
if words of affirmation, which is 100% mine, you probably could tell that already. Like I need to hear it. And
Yeah.
not everybody is the same way. So I would imagine that trying to communicate the way the other does is super helpful when fostering any type of relationship. What does a secure relationship look like? How do we foster those?
Yeah. So with a secure relationship, again, it's a set of skills. It's a set of relationship skills. So if someone grows up with a secure attachment, it's because they had attachment figures that were attuned to their needs, right? They actually held space for you to talk about your emotions without getting defensive, without getting reactive. So you felt comfortable experiencing what you were experiencing and talking about it. So there's a level of trust there. You trust yourself, you trust others. There's a sense of feeling like you can rely on your attachment figure. There's consistency. um, you just feel safe and secure within the relationship. So taking all of that, right, and really applying that into your own life. So learning the skills to understand your emotions, communicate what you're feeling in non-threatening ways. And actually, I was going to tell you, there's this really great book. It's called Nonviolent Communication. Maybe you've heard of
Mm.
it already, by Marshall Rosenberg.
No, but I'm interested.
Ooh, and that applies to all aspects of your life, including career, but how to communicate with people in a non-threatening way.
Right.
Really, really good. Again, it's a set of skills, right? Learning how to regulate your emotions, the mindfulness, as you were saying, because you're not going to be so reactive. You can actually ground yourself and then logically come up with a solution or a different approach. Um, what else? Yeah, I mean, it's all about changing the way that you experience love. It's about changing the way that you view love, you experience love, you approach love, and that's all with changing your habits, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you behave.
Yeah. So when you're working with someone, what are some of the common things that maybe they struggle with that you are like, I can walk you through this, no problem?
Yeah. So there's a few common things depending on what your attachment style is, right? But a lot of it has to do with, first of all, a lot of people don't know what their needs are.
Yeah.
Oh, you can imagine if you don't know what your relationship needs are, of course you're going to have a problematic relationship because you don't know what you need in order to feel safe and secure. So we really, really focus on identifying what your relationship needs are and then how to communicate them, because there's a lot of fear around
Mm,
communicating your needs. You're like, oh, if I communicate my needs, what if they get mad at me? What if they leave me? Right? There's a lot of insecurity around that.
yeah.
So then with that process, okay, well, how do I challenge these insecurities? Right? Is it true that this person is going to leave me? Is it true that if they leave me, I'm going to be alone forever? Or is that perhaps just an insecurity? Is it part of my insecure attachment? Learning to challenge that. I mean, there's a lot of little pieces, but I would say that the needs and communication is a huge, huge factor. And also, who is your secure self? Who is the secure you that you are trying to embody?
Mm,
Right. And these practices in order to really begin embodying that secure version of you. And that just results in changing the way you think, the way you feel, the way you behave. It always comes down to those three components.
yeah. Usually for me, that's Beyonce because she looks good on stage.
Exactly.
And I'm like, okay, if I can find that confidence, maybe I'll feel better and then receive energy better.
Yeah.
Because
And that's embodiment.
yeah,
That's embodiment.
whoever that person is, I just happens to be Beyonce for me.
Yeah. I like it.
I know that you have your own podcast too. It's called Let's Talk Attachments. Are you loving it?
Yeah, I love it. It's so fun. It's great. I started the podcast because I just wanted to expand more on the issues that I talk about on Instagram. But now I've started inviting people on, and I started inviting actually people that have commented on my Instagram posts just to
Ooh,
kind of
okay.
share their stories on
Right.
attachment. Because it's cool. It's cool to like, and as you were saying, you don't feel so alone in these experiences when you hear that other people are kind of going through similar things as you.
Yeah. So it was important to you to share the knowledge. I mean, after all the schooling, all the training that you've done, it was important to you to share that knowledge. How did you recognize that there was a need, that there was that hole that was needing filled, that you're like, ah, I have a skill set that I can share and this might help?
It was, I don't know where okay, well, so I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. So I was doing therapy before,
Hmm.
but when I focused on coaching, right, I was like, okay, I have to pick a specific niche. What
Okay.
is this niche that I'm going to pick? And I heard in some kind of like workshop or something that you should pick a niche, something that you have heavily been through that you can teach people that wisdom. And it was always relationships for me. But I was like, oh God, like to go down that road, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Like I shut that door, you know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to make it my freaking business. Like
Yeah.
that's not what I want to do. But then I did. And because I mean, when you experience so much pain,
Right.
there's a passion there. Like you're passionate about that experience. You don't want people to feel that fucking pain, right? So it's
Right.
like, yeah. So I think that's just, yeah, from personal experience.
Cool. That's a big part of why I ended up doing what I'm doing too. I was just like, I
Yeah.
don't want people to struggle. Like, we spend most of our life at work.
Yeah.
And I know this podcast doesn't necessarily focus on like work related mental health stuff. We cover a bunch of things, but specifically in that realm, I mean, we spend most of our time there, and there's office politics and a bunch of weird little dynamics that we have to navigate through there. And that's most of our life. So what do we do? How do we do it? Those are the kind of questions that I want to ask. And I'm, glad you shared your insight on today. I love the artwork for your podcast too. Did you design that?
I did on Canva.
Canva, Canva. We do not deserve Canva. We do
I
not deserve
know.
Canva. Shout out to Canva. I love it too.
Oh my God, what a lifesaver.
It is.
Really.
It's really that easy. Uh, and what's next for you? What are you looking forward to that other people can sink their teeth into?
So right now I am focusing on I created a course, right? I created the course called My Secure Self, which again is all about that secure self-embodiment. Who is the secure you that you're trying to cultivate? How do we get that? How do we get to that version of you? So that's pretty much the next thing for me. Focusing heavily on that. And I mean, just continuing to put out this work and help people in the process.
Yeah. Well, you've done wonderful. The Instagram is where I found you, so it's getting the attention, and I resonated with it. I appreciate the content, and I very much appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Oh, thanks, Val. Appreciate it.